G'day, good morning. It's Fish the Beach Bum Investor here with a special edition of the Crypto Wave Investment Crew show. We're actually joined today by the co-founder and CTO of Gladius, Alex Godwin. A very exciting ICO coming up that our investment crew has actually got into. And I'm really excited to be joined by Alex today to discuss a bit about Gladius and the future. So Alex, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, mate. Good to have you on board. Mate, if you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I come from a technical background. I'm 20 years old. Was a computer science major at the University of Maryland College Park. Currently on as far as I'm concerned, I've dropped out at this point to pursue Gladius full time. We've been working on it for about 9 months now, 8-9 months full time. It's been a pretty cool adventure. So Bill, a little background on me. I picked up programming, probably in 6th grade. So I started learning Python a pretty long time ago. I've always been interested in, the whole programming side of things. So I actually, in high school, had a few internships. I worked in a machine learning startup for a while, did a lot of data processing there and some fun stuff, graph visualization. And then in college, I started moving into more like enterprise software. So I built some pretty cool solutions for the rapid prototyping lab on campus. So doing task management and organizing like all the people's schedules for 60 or 70 people. And then I got into a couple startups with my co-founder Max. And so we started building some fitness planners and meal planners based on some cool machine learning stuff. And this was probably a year ago, and we hadn't even gone live yet, and we were already getting malicious traffic. And so we started looking to Cloudflare and Akamai and all the DDoS prevention solutions that exist. And we basically realized they were ridiculously expensive for the business side of things when you wanted to buy a business class link or a class account. And we were seeing like this was, ICOs were in their prime at that time. There are some really interesting ones like Filecoin, the ones that were Golem was going on, things like that were really all about utilizing spare resources and selling them directly to users and removing the middleman. And no one had been doing that for bandwidth. So we thought that was a really good application. And, I started picking up Solidity and learning more about blockchain. Max was already trading, so he was doing a lot of crypto investment in Ether at the time and was doing really well with it. So I thought it was an interesting platform to get involved with. And it sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah, awesome. So when did you first start learning about blockchain itself? Through Bitcoin, was it?
Yeah, through Bitcoin. Early in high school, I started telling my parents they should buy some Bitcoin. So I think it was probably like 60, 70 bucks then per Bitcoin. It was 2011, maybe 2010, somewhere around there. Yeah, 2011 or so. Maybe it was a little bit more expensive than that. Basically, they would have made a lot of money if they'd listened to me, and I occasionally hold that over them. But so I've been interested in a long time. I did some mining back then. Same thing with Max. So we've known each other for about 6 or 7 years. So our interests have sort of been, pretty steady until about a year ago when the whole scene started really picking up again. We got really back involved.
Yeah,
so some actual disposable income to burn on it.
Yeah, I mean it's been a meteoric rise for not just Bitcoin but the crypto economy in general. So in terms of Gladius itself, how did that conversation go about? You and Max are sitting there mining, or you're having a beer? How did that conversation come about?
It was mostly no one had used bandwidth, and we were looking at how expensive it was to we were looking at how expensive it was to actually protect our own website and make it go faster with a content distribution network or content delivery network rather. And it's basically we were thinking of like good applications and ways to do it, and we thought creating a marketplace was the best way. And so it really just snowballed from there. It was not really one conversation we had. It was a lot of different conversations over the course of a few weeks on the best way to utilize this.
Yeah, cool. So breaking it down for the people who aren't aware of what Gladius does, what the proposal is, and what the value proposition that Gladius will be adding to the economy. What is the use of blockchain tech with Gladius? What problems are you trying to solve?
Sure. So Gladius uses blockchain mostly as a payment as well as communication platform and creating an open marketplace. And so the real benefit of using it as a communication platform is we can build this very fault-tolerant network that allows peer-to-peer communications between nodes and between all the individuals in the same network without actually revealing any IP information about any of them. So when you're talking from node A to node B and you're telling them something, they don't know who they're talking to. And by doing that, we can create a lot of security by obscurity. And we also have this communication backbone that's very fault tolerant. So it's pretty, Ethereum by its, as a concept is pretty much not DDoS, I won't say DDoS proof, but it's, very distributed and it's hard to take down. So it's a really resilient backend to build on. And then there's really it allows people to communicate that they want to join this network more than anything else that existed today. So if you're running a traditional CDN, you pretty much have to own all of the hardware involved, own or rent everything involved, which is really expensive. You probably won't utilize all of it to its fullest capacity, to its full capacity. So if you're renting a couple 10, 20, 30 edge nodes to get really good distribution, you're probably spending a couple $1,000s a month just on that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And that's if you want to build a custom solution yourself. And so you're probably not going to utilize the vast majority of that capacity for a small to medium-sized website. So it's pretty much, it's a big undertaking technically and financially. And so you have to own all the hardware, and that's pretty hard. So what we basically are letting people do is contribute to that directly and contribute their hardware. And there really hasn't been a platform to do that before. So I think that's pretty much what blockchain has been able to give us as far as a platform goes. Much better distribution to people, and then much better economic, so much easier transfer of capital around too.
Yeah, cool. So you kind of answered one of my questions there, and I was going to ask you how much these DDoS attack prevention systems cost the big companies. But for those of it, breaking it back even simpler, and honestly, I'm a surfer. I'm a tech noob, so I had to go and look up what DDoS attacks were and why DDoS attack prevention was important. When actually one of the members of the investment group brought this to my attention and said, "Hey, Fish, I think we better have a look at this one." I had to go and look up what DDoS attacks were. So can you just explain that in layman's terms for the guys, please?
Yeah, sure. So a DDoS attack is a distributed denial of service attack. So essentially what it is you have a lot of computers flooding a server with malicious traffic to overwhelm it. And essentially, if you think of bandwidth and the internet connection to your server is a pipe, there's only so much that can flow through it, which means if you flood it with a lot of nasty malicious traffic that's not going anywhere, you can block off access to everyone else involved. And so one common strategy to prevent that is by putting something in between the actual web server and the rest of the internet. And so normally when you're looking something up, when you go to a website, you go to www.example.com, you're going to a DNS server somewhere on the internet, and it's looking up the IP address for your computer. So you're going there and it's saying, okay, this is the IP address that you need to go to get there. What we do is we update that DNS record to be our servers. And so what'll happen is we have this big, massive network with a lot of little nodes on it sitting on the edge that are very hard to target and very hard to take down all of them. And we sit in between your tiny server over here and the open internet. We put a lot of bulk in the way, basically, that can filter out traffic and take a big hit and only deliver the good traffic to the end server. And so DDoS attacks are, in general, pretty devastating to websites, especially as we move farther and farther into an internet-based economy. If you have an e-commerce site, literally your only source of revenue just goes down and it stops working. So, protection is a really important thing there. And then also by a consequence of how we build our network, we actually create a content delivery network, which means we spread our traffic out over a lot of different nodes, and we put the static content. So the HTML, the JavaScript, the pictures, the videos, they sit on these little edge nodes on the edge of the network. And when you or me try to visit the site, we actually get connected to one that's really physically close to us. So, and the huge benefit of Gladius is it means we could have these nodes anywhere. So they could be in your neighborhood. So one issue, I'm sure if you know, for Australians is your internet's not great as far as access to other countries and things like that. What we can do is we can put this content in your local networks. So not local networks, right, your ISPs. And because you probably have good local access, that the vast majority of the content can sit there near you, and you can get really fast access to it. So you won't have to jump over a transatlantic cable to get somewhere, which is
That's brilliant. I think what you said with Australia's internet speeds was quite generous, saying that it's not the best. I think we're below most developing countries even. So, yeah, I mean, this is why I love a crypto that provides a use case. It actually comes in and says, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to use in layman's terms, we're going to use the unused bandwidth of your home internet to build a network and provide faster speeds on the actual pages and also preventing those DDoS attacks.
A lot of the other thing is, a lot of these big providers, because the infrastructure might not yet exist in a lot of these countries, they haven't built out their CDN infrastructure there yet. So I know Australia, I don't know what the city is, but it is the northwest. So, top left corner. I'm not sure where there's only like one Cloudflare node in the entire country.
Okay, and it's in the northwest of Australia.
Sorry?
The northwest of Australia, you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So somewhere up there's like one node in the entire country. Top left somewhere. I forget. I don't know what city it is, but basically, you've got a long distance to travel if you want to get content from there. Versus if you have Gladius, you can have a lot of distribution over the whole continent. Same thing with like Latin America and Africa. There's basically very low distribution there. They have one or two nodes maybe in the entire continent, which is, really, it's not great. There's a massive amount of people there and it's a huge economy, and, a lot of people are missing out on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe it's up in Broome or somewhere like that in northwestern Australia. I'm not sure, but you're right. That's an incredible distance from Broome to where I am. I'm on the border of the Gold Coast and Tweed Heads, and that's the opposite side of the country, which is a big chunk of land. So I'll get onto a couple that you spoke about there, actually. You spoke about, is it Cloudflare or Cloudflare?
Cloudflare. Like a thing you light, yeah.
Sure. I thought it was Cloudflare. Probably not allowed to call themselves that due to the prices they're charging. Anyway, we'll get past that. But there's another one, big one as well. Akamai, is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, Akamai. Yeah.
Akamai, beg your pardon.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're massive players, obviously, in this industry at the moment in preventing DDoS attacks. And I was looking up some of the market caps of these companies, and it's substantial to say the least.
And it's going to grow significantly in the next 5 to 10 years too.
You're talking about, I was looking at figures from 2015 from Akamai, and it was 2.2 billion turnover in 2015. So, $11 billion valuation in 2015. I read that Cloudflare is a little harder to get an exact valuation on, but estimates are up to about 3. Sorry, go again?
They haven't done an IPO yet, I don't believe.
Sure. I've read estimates between 1 and 3 billion, but the estimates are that it's also growing 450% year on year. That's massive growth.
Yeah, and there's estimates that they can, about 10% of the internet passes through Cloudflare servers too. So, they're not insignificant players. And that's sort of one thing that bugged us a bit, not so much from the, they're doing very well as a company, but, the internet is this really interesting decentralized resource, and you're putting a lot of power in a few companies, in the hands of a few companies to run the infrastructure. And that's, a little upsetting, to say the least. So.
Yeah, I think that's where blockchain is going to provide a solution in a lot of industries. This one wasn't obvious to me because I didn't even know what a DDoS attack was, and I didn't know we only had one node in Broome. I honestly have no idea. So, but I can see the use case for this, which is why we certainly are really happy to be involved in terms of the investment group. So, in terms of those companies I mentioned, how is it that Gladius are going to be able to, will Gladius be able to provide, the aim is to provide a cheaper, more effective solution? Is that what basically it boils down to?
It boils down to the fact that we're creating a marketplace. So, we're creating a lot of competition where there wasn't competition before. We're utilizing a resource that's a sunk cost for everyone. So, whether it's spare hardware or it's a spare internet connection you have, a lot of people, leave their house, about 16 hours a day, probably you're not home or you're asleep. There's a lot of time there that goes, the internet connections go unused, especially, one thing we're also looking into is data center time, as well as businesses too. There are a lot of underutilized or underused resources there. And then stuff like that can provide service level agreements, so we can actually provide contracts with people that guarantee uptime because they can resell that their internet provider's uptime. So that's there's two very distinct markets that we're looking into. We're looking into both the consumer level for building really highly distributed systems, and then if you want the enterprise solution, you can choose stuff that has service level agreements that are run by just business and enterprise solutions, and even then they still probably have significantly higher distribution. And it's cheaper because in both cases, they're sunk costs. These are things people pay for already. They were planning to pay for already, and they've already written it off as an expense. And you can recoup some of that. Versus if you're Cloudflare or Akamai, handling 10% of the internet is a extremely large infrastructure investment, both in like resources in hardware, software development, and like business, like owning or running a lot of business development, as well as like hiring hundreds and hundreds of employees. So I think we can be much more efficient. We can create a very competitive marketplace. So we're trending prices down that way, hopefully. And then we're also going to be, most of our network is composed of things that are already bought and paid for. So we should be able to lower our costs there.
Yeah,
and then it's more of an effective solution because we'll have significantly higher distribution.
Yeah, and obviously those savings are going to get passed on to the customer, making Gladius a more attractive form of DDoS protection. So we've probably explained a bit. We've probably explained how Gladius is going to prevent DDoS protection by using the unused bandwidth and resources that are sitting there idle, essentially. But how can people look to cash in on their unused resources and their unused bandwidth? How does that work? Can you tell us a bit about that, Alex?
Yeah, sure. So come March, we'll actually have a better beta open. We have some alpha stuff on our GitHub right now, but it's a little hard to set up and it's not really super friendly. But come March, what we'll have is a nice software. You can download it. It'll have two services, one that runs on your computer in the background, and then an interface that you can connect to. And then you use that interface to request to join pools. So you say, I want to join this pool, and you basically submit information about your location, your IP address, the amount of bandwidth you have available, and some contact information. And then the pool will vet you. So they'll say, okay, this person is in a desirable location. They look like they have enough bandwidth to support the network. They have, and we can contact them, and then they can get some more information about you, like maybe an ISP bill or something to show that you actually have that connection. And then once they've done that, you can be accepted into the pool and actually start accepting traffic. So the sort of connections we're favoring are more symmetrical. So probably around 50-50, like 50 up, 50 down, which is a little bit hard in some places in the world, obviously. But that's the sort of thing that we're looking, it would be better for the platform as far as, development. And it's harder to get when you get those really low values to send very specific amounts of traffic their way. So that's really the market we're looking into. Or also, you set up a little Raspberry Pi or a small computer and you leave it in the corner and you plug it into your router and, you just sort of earn some extra cash. We're basically trying to think of ways we can create maximum uptime as well as reduce sort of the actual burden on the user there. So I'm trying to think of some good ways to develop Raspberry. Have you ever heard of a Raspberry Pi?
Funny you should mention that. We're looking into a couple of projects with Raspberry Pis ourselves. So I've just learned about it recently. We're actually we're setting up staking for some of our, as you know, we're an investment group. I work for PIVX, but we do look at a few projects. One of the things we're setting up is staking on Raspberry Pis. We're trialing that at the moment.
Awesome. So yeah, that's the sort of stuff we'd be looking into developing for. We'll see if it's, if it's the right type of hardware, but we're looking for small little hardware solutions you can plug into your network and forget about, and just earn some extra cash on the side. We're also thinking, this is the sort of stuff, depend on your internet prices, but right where I am in College Park in Maryland, you can get a gigabit internet connection, gigabit symmetrical, so gigabit up and down for $80 a month. So getting a second line to your house for something like that, you could, and they don't have any transfer limits either, so you can really start getting some extra cash in that way as well.
Yeah, cool. We'll have to look into that in Australia. I don't know if our speed is going to be good enough.
You guys supposedly have a fiber thing built by the government, right? Coming through eventually?
Yeah, I think honestly, mate, that they call it fiber. I'm not sure. There's a lot of negative press going on about a multi-billion-dollar waste of money in this country at the moment. So, look, I got mine upgraded recently. I think I get 30 up, 30 down.
Okay, not too bad.
Well,
I'm only 100. I'm only 100 here, so you know.
Yeah. I don't really know what the difference is. I just go, yeah, give us the
More speed.
I got to do streaming. So yeah, but it's it is expensive over here as well. So whether it'd be worth people actually connecting for the specific purpose of that, maybe not. But I can tell you now that every person in Australia just about has home Wi-Fi, and most people are on unlimited plans, and there's going to be plenty of spare bandwidth there for certain hours of the day. So I think that's it's certainly got potential for people in Australia to look at earning that residual income. And one thing we've talked about on this show a lot is in 2018, I think it's going to be a big year for coins that are providing a residual income in some way. Now, whether you call it proof of stake or not, probably not so much in this circumstance because you're actually using bandwidth rather than the coin to earn the residual. But in any case, residual income coins, I think, are going to be really, really popular come 2018. So I think that's a big tick for Gladius there, that they've got that built into the Gladius economy. So, mate, we'll get on to the team. I was going to see if I can, hang on, let me try something. I want to see if I can present my screen because then I can bring the team up.
The thing on the left, the green icon.
Yeah, I'm going to try. Oh, the green icon? I'm going to try this because I've got the team here. Like, I've got the screen. This is going to take 2 minutes. People laugh at this all the time. It's going to take 2 minutes of mucking around. Bear with me. Screen share. Yeah, I think I can. All right. I'm going to bring up the team here. Just I'll get you to tell us a bit about the team while I bring them up on screen. So I'm going to go share. Whoop. Now I go, oh, hang on. I had this all prepared. I was so organized.
No worries.
All right. Can you see that on screen now?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
There we go.
All right. So here's the team. If you can just tell us a bit about the team.
Sure, let's go through everyone. So Jeremy, he's been helping us a lot with connecting to people, and he's local to us in Maryland. So we've been talking to him, and he's been helping. He was one of the initial people on the project, helping us connect to the guys we've been working with for our marketing and PR, and he's been great about that. So Joseph Steinberg, he is a cybersecurity advisor for us. So he writes. He used to write for Forbes. He writes in Inc. He has a piece that he wrote on us, and then he also does Secure My Social. So I believe that they do sort of like fake news detection and interesting stuff like that, and monitoring for social media. And so he also, I can't remember the name of the book, but he is one of the cyber certifications. He's the author of that textbook. So he's a really interesting guy, and he's been very helpful in terms of overall architectural planning and talking to people in the space and getting some press publications and things like that.
Cool. And moving on to Max.
Yep. So Max is the original founder. So it was his idea. I worked with him, but he was the one that originally said we should do DDoS protection on the blockchain. So he's been doing a lot of programming. He's done a lot of programming throughout high school. He worked for National Institute of Health here. He worked for a startup who did a lot of political action here in DC. And he's also founded a couple of things with me, which is pretty fun. And he worked at Bloomberg this summer doing financial modeling and things like that.
Cool. Okay, moving on to Frank.
So yeah, Frank is a founder of dCorp. He's a great Solidity developer. I really like him. Fantastic guy. He did our crowd sale contract. I like Solidity, and I'm a pretty good Solidity developer, but our crowd sale is pretty complex. And so he wrote a few thousand lines of Solidity for that. And he's a fantastic smart contract developer. So a lot of really interesting logic built into the sale. So all of our bonuses and vesting are built right in, which is something you don't see in a lot of crowd sales. A lot of that's done manually. So it's a pretty interesting contract, and he did all the token designing too.
Yeah, cool. All right. And
also, as a side note, for our crowd sale, we've had it audited by 2 separate firms 4 times.
Oh, excellent. That's good to hear. I like that sort of transparency.
Yep.
All right. And is it pronounced Dory?
Yes, it is. And so Dory's been, he was chief of marketing, and I believe he's been doing, he did business development for Encapsula.
Hmm.
And so they're a Israeli-based denial of service protection and CDN provider. And so he's been coming on, he just came on recently in the last week or so, along with Jim, to help us do business development and market research or market outreach.
Cool. And Jim is this man here.
Yeah, so Jim has a lot of experience with cybersecurity. He's been helping us. He's going to lead our strategy and business development. So he's going to help us read into, or sorry, get into the data center market, as well as talk to a lot of ISPs and people like that, so we can really start integrating heavily into the architecture of the internet, and sort of becoming an enterprise solution, not so much just the small business and the medium-sized business, saving them a lot of money, but really moving into enterprise-based solutions where we can do, big service level agreements and large contracts.
Yeah.
He's a developer, so he's done a lot of cybersecurity stuff. I believe he got the undergrad from the University of Maryland in computer science and a PhD, I believe, in marketing or business research and things like that in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, cool. Actually, I'll just respond to something you said there, Alex. I was over on Telegram, on the Gladius Telegram group earlier today, and I saw someone asking the question, how many devs are there at Gladius?
Yeah.
And the answer was given that, look, a lot of the core team are actually devs. So they're listed as CTOs or founder and CEO and business and marketing, but they're actually developers as well, proficient developers.
So, yeah, a lot of the core team are developers. And then also we have contract employees, and as unfortunate it is, we're an early stage startup, so we'll have people that we contract out who they have day jobs, and they work for companies like Akamai and for DNS providers, and they don't quite want their name on the website yet because that might upset their employer.
Of
So
course.
there's some people we're working in the background with that are they're definitely great developers and they're really good at what they do, but they don't really they don't want to be publicly facing about it quite yet.
Yeah, cool. I understand. Now, this guy here we spoke to at the start of the show. So we probably got enough information on you, Alex, and we'll continue to meet a bit more of you as we go through. How about Marcelo?
Yeah, Marcelo's co-founder with me and Max, and so he's been doing a lot of web development with us and operations and the fun accounting side of things. So that's really what he's been interested in recently, and so he's been doing investor and purchaser outreach as well.
Sure. I think you mean that's what he's had to do recently. No one in the history of the world has ever been interested in accounting. All right.
Oh yeah.
Moving on. Hansko.
Yeah, so Hansko, he's been helpful and just keeping up. He came along with Frank, so he's been helping us gather ether and do getting fiat and things like that. He's doing a lot of operations advising, so he's just been very helpful on the project.
Cool, excellent. And moving on to Ruben.
Yeah, so Ruben's actually been he's got his PhD in artificial intelligence, and his specialty is actually, surprisingly enough, integration testing and things like that. So he's going to help us develop a continuous integration pipeline, and actually sort of start building a pretty comprehensive solution to the problem, to the project. So actually building the whole, when we have 10 developers working on something, when someone makes a change to the code, and they do something like that, what we want to be able to do is run a lot of tests, automatically make sure that it's passing and doing the right thing or what we want it to do, and then having staging until we move it into the production on our GitHub and things like that. So essentially just helping us build that pipeline. And then long term, we want to be able to develop some things that are interesting on the node side that can detect traffic anomalies and block them preemptively without actually explicitly knowing what they are. So using some interesting machine learning there.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys because I wouldn't even have a clue how to start doing that. Moving on to Ori. Ori.
Yeah, so Ori is with Inbound Junction, and so he's been doing a heavy marketing push for us. He was actually some of the Inbound Junction, and Frank also provided some seed funding for us. And so they've been working with us with both seed funding and their services to, do SEO, to do marketing, and just general, they've worked very closely with us for investor outreach and some other basically very business related things. They've been working, very closely with the company.
Yeah, cool. And moving on to Mike.
Mike's same sort of thing. He's doing a lot of marketing. He's been running our ads, so he's very good at that. And he came along with Frank from D Corp. Yeah, he's with Frank, and he's very good at the ad side of things.
Excellent. All right, I think we've got a couple to go here. Yes, we do.
Yeah, Conrad designed the website, and he's been helping us make some of the interfaces. So yeah, that's pretty much what Conrad has. He designed the whole website, and I don't know if you've gone through our KYC process.
Yes, I have.
It's gotten pretty advanced now. We've got a lot of monitoring in the back end, so we can do some pretty cool stuff with looking at analytics. And he's a fantastic developer, and looking forward to working with him more in the future. And then obviously Roy has been. Sorry.
I got to tell you, I got to give credit to this person then, because I found I'm not good with computers, as we experienced at the start of the show, guys. The reason we're a bit late on is because I was mucking around and Alex was thinking his microphone wasn't working. It's because I had my computer muted. And it took me 10 minutes to figure out that the problem was at my end, and all I had to do was unmute my computer. So yeah, again, sorry about that, Alex, but man, when you're dealing with technical idiots like me, that's something you're going to get. But what I was getting
I've done it before too.
What I was getting onto is that the ICO process, because we invested in the pre-sale, the ICO process itself and the KYC process was really, really easy for me. And if I can do it, that's kind of the test case right there. If Fish can do it, anyone can do it. So I got to give credit to
Connor did a fantastic job there. He's a really good guy, and he is, he works like he will work until something is done, and he'll do it. He'll do a great job first time. So he's a really good developer. He works like a machine.
For sure. I found that the user interface like really intuitive, really easy to use. So
awesome.
Good stuff to comment there. And Roy?
Roy is the graphic designer, so he did the whole website design, did our nice business cards, and he's been helping us with making good marketing material, so white paper, things like that. Awesome,
cool. So a strong-looking team, and that's what I always tell people who are looking to invest. Really look into the team that you're investing in. It's interesting. This is a name I've been hearing quite regularly, Jeremy.
Jeremy. He works with a lot of ICOs, and he's got a lot of connections in the space. So
yeah. All right, let's move on. What I wanted to do while I've got my screenshot up, because it takes me too long to switch between, I want to have a look at this calculator.
Yeah, sure.
This is cool. This is something I really, really liked. Now, it's only estimated earnings, guys. You've got to take that into account. But
take that with a grain of salt. It's also this is if you can continuously do that. So if you have total transfer limits, this won't be representative. But I think it's a good estimator of basically what we do is we take a lower than industry rate already of 3 cents. So a couple other providers charge about 5 cents per gigabyte, and then we actually half that value to create. If you think about it this way, you've got this much bandwidth. If you promote, like give this much of it available, you actually say, okay, I have this much for headroom for when an attack comes. So our mitigation capacity is significantly higher than the actual network capacity.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know what I love about this as well? You can adjust all these things, like your upload speeds and daily uptime. So if we were to adjust this for Australian standards, we can take this right down to 1 megabit per second. But I mean, look, honestly, the funny thing is that even at smaller upload speeds, you're still like at the 30, which is what I'd be able to provide in my downtime. You're still getting pretty good, monthly returns based on, 8 hours. I know this is only an estimate, but goodness, even half of that would significantly reduce your ISP bill, right? So it's really, really clever to make use of those. I'm just going to try and get this.
You got some, got a nice deep, you went some inception there.
Yeah, so I like the idea of using those unused resources. I'm a bit of a modern day hippie, I guess, and this is kind of like recycling, for digital recycling almost, isn't it?
I think that's actually, I have not done any of the calculations or anything like that, but if you're already purchased this sort of hardware and this sort of low cost and low power hardware, it may be better for the environment. I'm not going to say it's a selling point, but
yeah, fair enough. Well, I'll have to put solar panels in and maximize all my resources.
There you go, yeah.
When I come on the beta testing crew, because I'm going to do that, because like I've said, I'm your test case, Alex. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So I'll come on as beta tester.
That's our UI goal too. We've been working actually with some of the people who design MetaMask. I don't know if you've used MetaMask.
I haven't, no.
Okay, so it's a browser extension for Chrome and allows you to actually integrate the blockchain directly into your browser. So it'll inject Web3, and you can work with the Ethereum blockchain. And so we've been working with them to do some interface design to make that much more friendly. They're fantastic UI UX developers. So
sweet.
yeah.
I'm not really sure I know what that means, but it all sounds very
user interface and user experience. Sorry.
Yeah, cool. So making it easier for people like me who don't even know what the terms UI and UX.
Make it easier for everyone. Yeah. Even people who are pretty savvy with computers. If you put them in front of a poorly designed interface, they're going to have a hard time too.
Yeah, for sure. Hey guys, to those watching, I'm just going to let you know that we will be opening up the floor for some questions soon. We're just going to finish up a couple of things I had that I wanted to ask. It's my show and I get to go first. But after that, we will be opening up to the chat. I'll go over to the chat and check all questions. So if you want to start getting your questions ready for Alex, Ethercept has already dumped a whole lot on me that I don't even know if I can pronounce all the words in the question, but Ethercept, I'm going to try. Thank you for being absolutely brutal with your questioning. You do remember you invested in this, don't you, Ethercept? Goodness gracious me. Anyway, moving on. Look, I don't like to get, I know at PIVX as well, the core team don't like to get too much onto price estimates because it's probably best left those up to an analyst or up to the markets themselves, essentially, to decide the value. But looking at some of these, I'm going to throw some out there because looking at some of the valuations of these companies we've spoken about during this interview, I mean, even if Gladius could be successful in capturing 10% of something like Cloudflare's business, it's going to be valued substantially higher than the price that investors are paying at the ICO level.
Yeah, I think that is one thing to think about. Obviously, I can't say too much, but I think we have a very strong position in capitalizing on a lot of the market, and we could be a really effective and pretty powerful force, especially in the small to medium sized business. And there's a big hole in the market too. So Cloudflare has their $200 a month plan, and then they have $5,000 a month. So there's this big, massive gap that they have right there that I think we fit in nicely too.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know there was that big a gap. See, I'm not familiar with these companies at all in terms of the actual payment processes of each individual tier.
But that's massive. They pay for everything, right? They have the enterprise plan that pays a lot of money, and that's how they get their insurance that everything's going to work. And then you have everyone else paying a lot less. Most of their money comes from these big enterprise deals, and then they have everyone else a little bit on the low tier getting slightly reduced features and not the same sort of support. And I think it's not a great business model because you leave a lot of people a little bit lower and a lot of people really high. So
you know who has a similar business model to that? And I have a habit about bitching about some centralized companies, but eBay. Like you pay $59 a month to one tier and then you're up to $500 a month for the next. Yeah. And it's just, it's ridiculous because you've got to make these calculations and based on moving to the next tier, which I was right on the cusp of it actually being profitable, but it knocks out so much of your profit when you move to that and you're just a sole operator. Hey, but for these big companies, I was reading up some more stuff and there's like literally, please excuse the layman's terms, but that's how I do things here. It's literally companies being held to ransom. So hackers are going in now and they're kind of like the mafia getting protection money to say, look, pay us this much each month or we're going to bloody hammer you and your DDoS fees are going to go through the roof and all the rest of it. Now, if we can, I'm acting like I'm on the development team. If Gladius is able to achieve a more cost-effective alternative for preventing DDoS attacks, it makes hacking and actually trying to engage in profiting from DDoS attacks, it makes it somewhat obsolete. So people might even stop trying so much.
Yeah, and a lot of the other thing is, if we can create an economic incentive for people, if they own a lot of computers, I'm going to say own a lot of computers and they have access to that sort of those resources, like you can create some serious economic incentives to do a good thing. To actually sell it directly to websites rather than sell it to the bad actors too. So
yeah, it's a good point you make. And I read something else, speaking of, incentives to do good things, is that Gladius is actually going to have a bounty program to actually help find those bugs, which we all know happen in early stages of any company or any new technology. and people are actually going to be able to be paid to find and help fix those bugs, essentially, or at least identify them. So I think that was a really cool initiative by the Gladius team. A lot I liked about the way you guys are setting this up.
Also, the other thing, everything that we write is going to be open source too.
Oh, that's brilliant. I actually know what that word means now. I didn't 6 months ago, but I do. So you don't have to explain that one to me. All right. I just wanted to get on a couple of things about the ICO, just some general questions for you, Alex, before we throw over to the viewers. Mate, for the dates of the ICO, can we just go through that?
Yeah, sure. So the 24th is when we're going to start our public pre-sale, and then I believe it's January 14th is the actual public sale.
Yeah, sure. I'll just try and grab I wonder if I can grab the actual, I'll try it again. Bear with me for 2 seconds. I'm going to share my screen and go into the Inception world again. Let's have a look. Oh, have I done it? Screen share.
No, still see your face.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's disappointing for everyone. Let me see if I can get the screen up. All right, I want to go on to, you see how bad I am with this, Gladius? Here we go. Oh, I'm brilliant now. All righty. Now, what was I looking at? ICO, I'll go to home. Oh, no, it's here. Token sale.
Yep.
I think this is where I go. Yep. All right, cool. Is it down here? I think it is. Yeah, well, here's a bit anyway. So we can see here on November 24th, week one's going to be offering a 20% bonus for that first week.
Oh, actually, you know what?
That's going to be updated?
That does have to be updated. I didn't know that was still like that.
I will gladly accept payment for my bug fix live here on.
That should be moved to. Sorry about that. Yeah, that should be moved to.
That should be moved to
public pre-sale. It's based on contribution amount, not timing. And then in January, it's based off of contribution.
I did get I should have got it. I've got it on my other computer, and switching it from one to the other is not that easy for me. Well, obviously, you'll be working to get that updated shortly, but just in the meantime, Alex, if you can just actually take us through the ICO structure, we won't show it as such. If you can take us through that, that'd be great.
Let me drop in the Medium post we had that actually goes through that update.
Yeah, cool. That'd be sweet.
And it'll be a little bit more in depth on our token sale structure. Drop it into the chat. Here we go. That Medium post there. Maybe you can share your screen and actually show the. Or actually, I could probably do that too.
All right, cool.
Great. Can you see this? The
Medium
page?
Yep. I'll just put yours on. Hang on, so we can present to everyone. All right, there you go. Fire away.
Awesome. Here you go. So this is the new sale structure that we had. And so this gives you an idea of the public pre-sale here. So in the public pre-sale, this is starting November 24th and ends December 30th. So 2 days time. This is when this appears, and it's based on contribution, just like the private pre-sale was. And then in the public sale, starting January 14th, we get a time-based bonus. So it encourages people to invest a little bit earlier. And there's no minimums there. The minimum there is, I believe, 0.04 Ether. So then that's just to cover, the transaction cost pretty much.
Yeah, I like that. I saw that the minimum we've been blocked out of a couple of ICOs simply because 100 Ether minimums and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think that opening up to the masses is a good idea in a decentralized movement. So offering it as low as that sort of investment rate is a really good thing, Alex. I like that. What we'll do now is we sort of went into it a little bit there with the roadmap for the ICO. But just in terms of some questions that no doubt you're going to get absolutely hammered with over the next few months, people want to know about when are we going to hit exchanges and when's beta testing going to happen. Now, you spoke about March next year. Was I right in saying for
Yeah. March 2018 is we're actually going to partner with, we have the partners you saw on our website there, CoinSpeaker, It's Bitcoin, and Nexus Social. They're going to work with us, initially, and what we're going to do is give them lower reduced rates. So that's actually our business model, at least in the beginning, to get, the problem with being a security company is you need to, have trust, and, that's pretty hard to build. So you have to have reputation. And so to encourage some people to get on board and build some brand trust and some recognition there, we're giving lower reduced rates to websites in the beginning and working very directly with them to actually figure out, anything we need to update in the user experience side of things. And we're building, essentially, it's a private beta for the websites and a public beta for everyone else to get involved in. And then in August, we'll open the marketplace to everyone. And, it basically at that point becomes a, free for all. It's still technically beta software. There might be some flaws, but we're going to basically be, the goal is to be as developed as we think would be ready for release. And then by December, that's sort of when we've added the added polish to make the network full-fledged.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. And in terms of the actual coin, the GLA coin getting listed on exchanges?
I can say that we've had some conversations with exchanges. They've reached out to us, but you'll hear some more about that soon. We can't, it's based on a lot of things, with the SEC, and we haven't really been actively reaching out to them, and we've been letting people come to us, but we've been having positive conversations with them.
Yeah, we have a similar approach at PIVX, mate. We tend to concentrate on, our heaviest focus is on the development itself. And then we can work on marketing and getting on exchanges and things like that. But development of the tech is key at PIVX. So I think it sounds like you guys are taking a similar strategy there, which I can certainly understand.
We should have an announcement that in the next week or so. But for now, not really talking about that one.
Yeah, cool. No worries, mate. That's fine. So we'll assume that it's all coming out soon. Everyone go and buy up stacks. No, I'm joking. All right, so I'm going to get up my Discord group because my group investors had some questions. And these are people who have actually already invested. So
thank you, guys.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for the thank you. No, we're stoked to be in, man. We got really excited about this one. But there's a couple of questions here. Let me just go. We've actually got a Gladius channel on our Discord group now, Gladius ICO. There was a couple of questions here, and then one of our guys, Ethercept, has got like 15 questions for you. So, and then we'll move on to
I can hang out for a while. So there you go.
Cool. We'll get through these as quick as we can. But there's some great questions here. Okay, BB Junkie said, another question for our guy tonight. Are the fees paid out to the users of the desktop app dynamic? As new users come online, will the older users see a drop in their payments like mining difficulty?
Okay. Yeah, so it's dependent on, the pool that is running that. And so the thing is, ideally, pools would try to sit at about 40 to 50% utilization. And that's when they would be, they'd basically be able to keep nodes at that point in the pool and not like encourage them to leave to other pools. And so they have an economic incentive to keep utilization at a profitable amount. So if they accept way too many nodes in and, you've got really sparse distribution of bandwidth that, even if you've said, I'm going to give 30 megabits, you're only getting like a megabit of traffic, right? Then at that point, people are going to say, oh, I'm going to go find another pool that, has much higher utilization. And so that's the sort of thing that we're going to be, hopefully there's a market force driving that in the correct direction there. But yes, if there is an oversaturation in one pool, the total revenue is the same, but the value goes down for the individual node.
Yep, good. Thank you. That's question answered in my opinion. All right, let's move on to Lifeless Ditto. Oh, there's a few questions here. Lifeless Ditto said, question, will the older node receive more bandwidth like a reputation system?
So actually, that's something we've been discussing internally. One thing that we want to build, and we're still thinking about the best way to implement it, is building a reputation system for nodes. So serving the correct amount of bandwidth, having the best uptime, that sort of thing, would actually give you a multiplier. And then discovering nodes with worse uptime would actually lower their multiplier. And so the total amount of distribution of tokens to the pool stays the same. but where it goes would be dependent on, basically how well you're doing up to a certain value, of course. But if you are, a node that's, constantly dropping packets, or you're not doing a great job, and other nodes have detected that, then you can actually start lowering people's overall value that they get. That's something we've been discussing as a possibility. It's in the roadmap, but that would be more of an August target in the network.
Sure, awesome. All right, and this is one that's been dropped vicariously for Ethercept. I don't know how this got in here, but anyway, it is. So how are they planning to handle ISPs blocking or throttling their service? Or are they expecting to pay them more, which will increase fees?
Actually, so I think we'll be a net neutral when it comes to ISPs there, because what we'll be primarily focusing on is connecting people to people that would have the lowest latency. And so one thing that we're going to primarily focus on is if your neighbor is running a Gladius node, or someone on the same ISP is connecting you to them first. And what that actually means is we lower their transit carrier costs. So they won't have to pay money for that bandwidth to leave the ISP and go to another one. And so if we focus, more heavily on that, we can actually, lower their overall costs of data leaving the network. Their internal network stress stays the same because, that traffic was already going to go there. And we can lower their overall cost leaving the network. So overall, I think they will not care, at least on the levels that we are pushing it. And then in the long term, what we're actually looking into doing is we've talked to a few ISPs, we have connections with CenturyLink and a few others, that we would want to put Gladius nodes in their actual backbones. So getting some nodes and getting some servers sitting in there that we can actually distribute a little bit more content throughout the network.
I think that's smart, make those real world connections. I talk about that a lot on the show. Another one by, I think this comes through Ethercept, and this is an interesting one. If Cloudflare decides to purchase your company, would you agree to it?
See, I don't know. At least at this stage, I don't think we would. The issue is they don't really have a huge profit incentive out of us, because we're obviously going to be operators of the pool, and we're going to have some interesting characteristics and things there, but and some ways to make money. But as a whole, it's going to be open source software that anyone can compete with. And the sort of hardware that they'd offer, they'd have a hard time competing in a system like this. And there's not really an incentive for them yet.
Cool. Hey, I just wanted to bring up something here. This is one that was asked again by BB Junkie. I know it's a funny name, but that's the name he's chosen. BB Junkie's from our investment group, and he said this has kind of been answered by one of our other group members, which is what we do a lot. We help each other out and collaborate on research. Use our own time, our own spare time, if you like, the same way as Gladius is intending to. So we collaborate together, put all our research together, and it keeps us ahead of the game. But one of the things that BB Junkie said is, look, I can't see any mention of a vesting period for the founders or the founders or the team's share of tokens.
Oh, yeah.
But Lifeless Ditto's come on and said there is actually a 2-year vesting period for the founders. Can you actually confirm?
Yeah, so the founders' tokens are actually vested for 18 months, and that's locked in our smart contract. So it's not even legally locked. It's actually locked in the contract. We can't touch it.
Awesome. Well answered. Perfect. So just for those of you worried that the founders and the developers are going to run off with all your money, you can do it quicker than them, because they got to wait 18 months to do it. And by then we'll be kicking.
Hopefully we'll have a very well-developed platform at that point. We have every incentive to stick around.
Yeah, of course, mate. That's well answered. Okay, what's this one? What risk is there to users running desktop client in terms of loss of internet connectivity due to a DDoS attack?
So that risk is always going to be there. Hopefully, that's sort of what you sign up for if you do that. Hopefully those DDoS attacks get very well distributed, but you are opening yourself up to that by joining the pool. And we'll do everything we can to mitigate that. But there is a possibility that would happen. It's a non-zero possibility that your internet could be not disconnected, but very significantly impacted. And that's sort of why I've been thinking one of the things we want to encourage is, if you can, a secondary line would give you much better uptime and not impact your connection, and could theoretically pay for itself. So.
Okay, cool. And now here comes he only had 8 questions. That's not too bad for Ethercept.
That's not too bad.
Really in there. So Ethercept sent me a few questions for you. One is, and if I'm saying anything wrong, it's just because I actually don't know the terms and that. But he's asked, how do you do detection?
Yeah, so there's a couple different methods there. So at least on the node level, what we're doing is we're looking for, IP matching, so blacklisted IPs. We're looking for rate limiting, so people who are sending a lot of traffic. Then there's a few other, we could block entire geographic regions. And that's sort of what happens on the edge of the network. So that's what so nodes in the network don't actually have access to the dynamic content or the API calls going through because it's encrypted. So they won't be able to see the traffic. That gets decrypted at the master node level. And there's where we start looking for traffic anomalies. And we can start saying, okay, this address is doing weird stuff. It's sending a lot of things that would be considered malicious. So maybe SQL injection, cross-site scripting, stuff like that that we'd notice. Or they're trying to exploit something on the application layer, or even that they're just doing nasty stuff like, certain attacks where you open a socket, you leave it open, you just sort of fill up the RAM of the other server. We can detect that sort of attack there and then blacklist it on the as an IP level.
All right, cool. I understood very little of that, but I hope Ethercept did. Next question he has asked is, at what rate can you handle mitigations? I guess that's dependent on how big the network gets, right?
Yeah, so it's very dependent on what pool you're purchasing, the setup of that pool, what sort of hardware is composed in that pool. I don't think the targets that we're pushing for just yet are the crazy terabit attacks that took out Dyn. That's not the sort of thing that I think most people can. That's what, as much as it sucks to say, the way that the internet is built, those sort of attacks, you need to control a lot of the internet to fix them. That it sucks, but it's true. A lot of the attacks we'd be looking to mitigate are, the sub 100 gigabit or the application layer, because we'll have, as an open source application, people like us. And so we're going to do a lot of security research, and we have a lot of interesting partners in the space that are, wanting to do security research for us and with us, that we can actually look for application level attacks as well. And so that's what we're going to be doing a heavy focus on, at least in the next month or so.
Yeah, cool. I mean, obviously, that can be scaled up if the participation rate of the bandwidth being accessible increases. But
exactly.
for the moment,
the model is very similar as to what Cloudflare does. And if we get big enough and there's enough people participating, that's the sort of thing you can do. But if you're Akamai, what happens is, even if someone leaks the IP address of your website, what you go and do is you talk to whatever ISP is providing it, and you say, hey, can you just stop all traffic here that isn't ours? And you go talk to them, and you like the power of a lot of these big companies are the connections that they have made, and that they have literal control over the internet. So
yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of this. I'm sure it's not just me, so it's good for everyone learning. Okay, another Ethercept question. Since you don't offer the type of traditional DDoS protections, what services do you plan to offer? How do you plan to serve websites without having users run web servers on their host machines?
Sorry, could you repeat that really quickly?
Yeah, sorry, man. I had a motorbike going past. I live in Tweed Heads, so people in Australia will realise why that reference makes sense. Anyway, since you don't offer the type of traditional DDoS protections, what services do you plan to offer? How do you plan to serve websites without having users run web servers on their host machines?
Okay.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, so essentially we are running something. It's a very heavily modified web server, and what it does is it just caches a lot of static files. So it's an automatic cache of static files, and then it forwards dynamic requests through to the master node. And so it's essentially a very lightweight, very fast web server. And that's the goal of what we're serving. And because all it really is a proxy in a lot of the sense, in most of the senses there, it doesn't really have to do any application sort of interesting stuff. So it can run pretty effectively.
Cool.
That's the goal. And for the type of traffic that we're talking about, the 100 megabits, we're pretty confident, the packets per second there would be able to run on like a Raspberry Pi or some very low power hardware. Not necessarily, take up your computer time.
Sweet. All right, let's move on to his next question. I don't even know what one of these things is, but he says, how do you plan to do NAT traversal, NAT traversal?
Oh yeah, so the problem with that obviously is, you have to open up your router to let some traffic in. And what we're planning on doing there is, talking to people and building a very comprehensive guide of pretty much every common router that exists, possibly building some scripts to automatically open those ports for default settings. But yeah, the issue is you do need to do a little bit of configuration. So this isn't for everyone probably, but the goal is to make it, if you have a little bit of tech understanding, you could play with your router settings, given a nice guide, and get it working. And
Cool.
we'll have some tools to allow you to check to make sure that that works. So you don't be just flying blind. You can actually have some troubleshooting help and that sort of thing. And obviously we're pretty active on Telegram and things like that. So we'll be around to help out.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really enjoyed about actually coming over and inquiring about an investment to start with. Is I didn't talk dollars, I didn't say anything, but I was helped out a lot by a guy called John over there, who I first.
Yeah, John is a great guy. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's done really well. He put me in contact with Nadav, who in turn put me in contact with you, which is how we're here today. But my point is, man, I used to be in customer service. I used to have a couple of hundred staff in Australia and Sri Lanka, and customer service was it was my gig, right? And when I'm provided with bad customer service, I'm the worst customer in the world. I turn into a complete arsehole, to be honest. And that was one of the things I was really appreciative about coming over to Gladius. You're always a little bit concerned that you're going to be treated, I don't know a lot about tech and you might be treated a bit funny, but I was really welcomed over there. So I've got to say big tick so far on the Gladius customer service. And I certainly hope that continues and that's a strong focus once the product is actually up and running, because I think that's really important, and that's something that you could certainly separate yourselves from Cloudflare and things like that. So that was
you have a community involved too. So more so than these big companies, we have a lot of people who help other people. It's an open source project. There's a lot of ways that we can not only decentralize the network, but we can decentralize communications and build a lot of interactions between people to help each other.
Yeah, community is hugely important. That's a big focus of ours as well at PIVX, obviously. What was I going to say? This is another one that I have no idea what he means, but he says, what kind of load balancing algorithm do you plan to leverage at the proxy level?
So I'm not sure what he means, what proxy level. If you're talking about, there's two distinct proxies that we run. There's the node at the edge, and then there's the master node. And it's dependent on what you're looking for. If it's the node level, they have a primary proxy, the master node that they forward to. Excuse me. And then they have, a secondary, basically failover at the edge node level. And then at the master node level, they forward directly to the destination server. And so if there are multiple destination servers, that would be primarily based on geography and then failover.
Cool. All right, I will have a look at the next question. Did you build all the technology, or are you leveraging another vendor for some of it?
So right now it is built off of Varnish, which is a pretty common industry standard, but we're probably going to modify that pretty heavily or build our own solution. Today I just spoke to some interesting guys who are very interested in helping us out, and they want their C++ developers, and they do DDoS protection for a living. So they're going to, hopefully we can start moving in on building a much more custom client in the next few days.
Cool. He said I think you might have answered this one a little bit already, but I'm not 100% sure, so I will ask it because he's one of the investors. It's good to get in the info. He said, can you provide any more information on the Gladius proxy and what kind of network capacity does or will it have?
So yeah, it depends on which one you're talking about. Again, if it's the master nodes, that's dependent on what the pool setup. So the nice thing about Gladius is there's a lot of areas for customization to build solutions that suit their customers. So if you're looking for much higher distribution of your web service before, you can have a lot of master nodes that round robin balance between them. Or if you're looking for a much less dense solution, you can have really high capacity master nodes and data centers. Or you can even build custom hardware load balancing before they get to master node. There's all sorts of interesting ways you could set this up. And I think that's one of the other big things is, when you're buying a Gladius pool or purchasing their services, you can tailor it to your needs. It's not a one size fits all solution like Cloudflare is, or some of our competitors. It's like, say you're a European publication, you don't really need edge nodes in Latin America if your readers aren't in Latin America. So you can, excuse me, sorry about that. I might have to grab some water in a second.
Yeah.
Your nodes you could focus your nodes and your resources primarily in Europe. And you could spend your money where it matters rather than spending it on a lot of the planet that you don't use. So it's the customization that really is powerful, I think.
Cool, cool. I'll get on to this next one. This is Ethercept saying that he has one more question, but now it's a three-part question. So I guess there's three questions in a row here, but he's listed it as number 8. So his question is, how do you plan to protect the proxies from DDoS attacks? What technology ensures their availability? How much network capacity ensures you can handle the bandwidth of a large-scale DDoS? And
Okay,
I
so
think that you answered a little bit of that already in saying that you're not actually targeting those massive,
yeah, the
those
giant attacks are not what we're targeting.
attacks.
Yeah, as far as availability, these are, the master nodes are services that are, they're servers that are expected to have uptime. And so they're trusted by the pool, and those are not going to be consumer hardware. Those are things in data centers. Those are things in ISP backhaul, that sort of stuff that has guaranteed uptime, or things like that. And so that's what we'd be looking for in the master node level. And then as well as when one of those fails, the nodes can fail over to other master nodes as well. And that can all be dynamically done in the blockchain. And then as far as when an edge node dies, we have some uptime checking that will be done, by nodes to other nodes and nodes to the master node, basically health checks. And if one of them goes offline, the pool can realize that pretty quickly. And because we have very low TTL on our DNS to do some of the bandwidth moving around, we can actually very quickly remove them from the network. And they won't get any content anymore. Or they won't get any service anymore. So there'll be minimal disruption if bad things happen to nodes, to the website. And basically, there's a lot of failover to the next step if unexpected things happen. I think that may have answered it. Let me know if I missed a part.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's have a look. We're going to open it up to the people watching in the live stream now. So I've missed a few questions here, obviously, because I've been chatting. But if you have got some questions, just pop them in there now. I'll try and catch up with a couple that I can see here straight off the chat. But if you have got one that you really wanted answered, guys, now's the time to put it in the messages, and I'll get it answered by Alex himself. Let's have a look. March, yeah, it's older than. Okay, so Chris Sikos has said, it may be a silly question, but why would people choose Gladius over Cloudflare or Akamai, which are already trusted products?
Yeah, sure. So as far as why you would choose someone like us, essentially we can have lower prices and much higher distribution, and those are pretty much the big two selling points. We should hopefully be able to offer lower prices because of I don't know if you were here earlier, but I talked about a lot of the network is composed of parts that are sunk costs already. So recouping those costs is a lot less than Cloudflare, who has to recoup the costs just primarily. They weren't planning on just paying for that. They want to actually have a good return on their investment, so they have to pay a lot more for it. And yeah, as far as distribution, we should be able to have nodes in more places and be able to tailor the experience specifically to the client.
Cool. Mark G's asked, how does Gladius employ blockchain tech?
Sure. So mostly blockchain is used as a way to have peer-to-peer network communication without exposing IP information. It's also used as a way to make payments. And it makes this really nice marketplace where we can actually allow anyone to list their pool on the marketplace and sell directly to websites and businesses without having a middleman in the way. And then it also allows people to join these pools in a nice, easy, decentralized fashion. So they can actually submit their application, right, to join the pool and actually be accepted that way. So that's more than pretty much it basically allows us to leverage all these really cool features in the same platform. And I think that's what's really powerful about it.
Cool. There's a couple more questions here. I'm just coming back to our Discord because some people are posting in our Discord, some people are posting in the chat. But here's a couple from our Discord group again. How in-depth is the released technical white paper going to be?
Yeah, so that I'm working on now. I'm making some pretty graphics, and I'm going to be sending it off to a graphic designer tonight or tomorrow morning. And so that'll be a little bit. It'll be a little bit a lot more in depth than the existing white paper now. So it'll go in more into how we're planning on doing a DNS deployment, more into how we're planning on doing and ensuring TLS, SSL, that sort of thing.
Cool.
And you just have more in-depth diagrams as well.
All right. And another question, what happens when a user uses 10 nodes on the same line? I have no idea what that means again, but.
Oh, yeah. So that's the sort of thing that we want to build. So first of all, the fact that we have contact information and we want to be able to vet nodes. The pool has the ability to vet nodes off chain. First of all, so showing your ISP bill, if they're like, hey, wait a second, we've seen that one before, would probably be a big deal. As well as the fact that we can do, we're going to be able to do drop packet detection. So if the content doesn't get forwarded to the master node, you could realize that, hey, something's up here. Also, they'd have the same IP address. So, that's a pretty easy way to detect it there.
It's a dead giveaway, that one. Even I know that. All right, another question. Will Gladius also act as storage service to compete with Filecoin?
We're not acting to compete with them, but we do store content on the CDN. The goal is to keep that pretty low, like less than 10 gigs of your hard drive space, maybe even less. And so essentially you need to store that static content to distribute it to websites, but really old content will be purged. So we should basically have a sort of asymptotic amount of content in your browser, or sorry, on your desktop.
Okay, and what prevents people from having multiple nodes to connect to different pools to ensure full utilization?
So that's nothing that we're preventing in the initial release. It's something that's not going to be implemented in the interface. But if you were, savvy and you realize you didn't have the total capacity that you were, you realize you didn't have the capacity that you weren't receiving enough traffic to meet your capacity, you could sign up for multiple pools. It's just right now creating those incentives and properly making sure that someone isn't oversubscribing their bandwidth is a challenge, and it's something we still need to work out. Creating the proper economic incentives to not do that, as well as the technical ones as well.
Cool. Another couple of questions coming through. These are a couple of our regulars actually. Crypto Chronicus said, how are you going to make sure that people are using Gladius and not just copying it?
Sure. So the thing is, we have a lot of the things that we'll bring to the table are intellectual property that we own. So a lot of the web application firewall rules, and a lot of the things like the research into the security is something that the company has access to and will release to the public. Also, the competition that we have, the reason that we'll be successful, or hopefully we'll be successful, is people trust Gladius, they don't trust someone else. And we're really becoming a service provider of our own protocol. So anyone can compete with us. If someone has the capability to build a lot of DNS infrastructure, a lot of service infrastructure, they can compete in the same marketplace as we can. And so it allows people to compete directly with the company and provide their own services in the long term. So even if we disappeared, which we have no intention of doing, the service would not cease to exist. And that's sort of the goal, the real true decentralization of it there. And then basically that's what there's no real incentive to duplicate what we've done, because you wouldn't get any farther than just implementing the protocol and building the service yourself.
Yeah, I tried releasing Facebook too, and no one joined. So, I think there's something to be said about being first in market as well. So,
yeah.
All right, a couple more questions coming through. I'm just going to keep firing them at you, Alex. And thanks for giving your time to do this, man. I really appreciate it. Johnny Crypto. Oh, actually, Xiao's one of the first in the investment crew. We got like 100 members now, but Xiao was basically, he started it all off the back of this show. And he wants to know when the tokens are going to be open for trading, but I think we did actually discuss that earlier. So exchanges, I can probably answer that. Exchanges are a difficult one to estimate with any certainty unless you're prepared to pay them essentially $500,000 if you're having the same experiences that we've had at PIVX, Alex. So it can be a little difficult. I think 2018 is going to be a big year for decentralized exchanges, and I think that's going to see the coin availability increase massively. So hopefully, obviously going forward into 2018, PIVX would like to be listed on some of those exchanges, and I'm sure that Gladius will look to utilize that market as well. Would I be fair in saying that?
Yeah, and then also for actual technical unlocking, the token is tradable when the public sale ends.
Okay.
So that's when the token is unlocked and tradable.
Cool.
So either when we meet our hard cap in the public sale or the sale reaches its conclusion.
All right, cool. This is a good one. Christopher Gray said 60%. Oh, sorry, Christopher Gray. There was someone's helping me, and there was no slide. Christopher Gray said, with above 60% and growing each year of internet traffic being served via 443, how do you plan to do PKI?
Okay, so he's talking about sort of the TLS side of things. So we have, at least that's what I think I got from that question. Essentially, the node has the node on the edge holds its own certificate, and then the master node holds another certificate. And because we verify static content through the pool, we actually check to make sure that a node is serving the correct content that is meant to serve. What we can do is inject JavaScript into that makes sure that they're using the correct keys as well. So basically what that means is when you visit in your browser doesn't have the ability to differentiate between keys registered to the same domain. And so when you're in the browser, what it'll do is it'll say, okay, this JavaScript will run and make sure that the node is forwarding your requests, your encrypted requests, to the master node to have SSL stripped there. And then it can't read anything that you send in form of like passwords or maybe personal information and that sort of thing. So that all sits inside of a nice encrypted tunnel, and then it just jumps right through.
Cool. Awesome. There's a couple of other questions there from Christopher Gray. Chris, they have been discussed previously, so you can pop back through the video and check for the answers there. I'm just noticing questions that have been answered. Here's a new one from Lifeless Ditto. What prevents pools from charging ridiculous prices to nodes, i.e. high percentages, when it's the only pool there?
Yeah, so that is a concern that we have, and so that's why we're going to be implementing a couple of the pools to begin with, because we don't have that, and we have the incentive to make the platform grow. So, we have every incentive to do the right thing to nodes, and so give them a good percentage, and we can actually take a pretty reasonable loss depending on the success of our ICO. So that's actually something that we can do as a company to encourage growth of the platform. And then in the long term, when there's fewer pools, or when there are more pools, then market forces should hopefully eliminate them.
All right, cool. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. And another thing I can add to that as well is that anyone who's going to be involved in getting involved in these pools, presumably are going to want long-term success for the project so they can continue to profit of it. So anything that's going to actually be put a negative effect on the charges that are being charged by Gladius is not sensible long term for that person looking to profit off their bandwidth and hardware long term. Makes no sense at all.
Yeah, sorry, someone just actually said in chat, I wouldn't recommend injecting a whole key. We're actually not doing that. We're injecting JavaScript to make sure that they're using the correct key.
All right, cool. Thanks for double checking the chat for me, Alex. I'm terrible at these things, man. I've literally got BB Junkie just retyping comments in our Discord group so I can see what's going on. But there's a couple more questions here as well. Will the content in the node be encrypted, and what happens if the content is illegal?
Yeah, so that is a concern. As far as the pool, there is a certain amount of transparency there and who is running it, and so that's hopefully what would help filter that out. and then also the reputation system of pools and market consensus can help remove them if they are serving illegal or doing something wrong.
Sure, sure. All right, sounds good to me. I think we're just about ready to wrap this up. Looks like our questions have been answered. Alex, thanks so much for joining us here today. The Crypto Wave investment crew is super excited to have got into that private pre-sale. We'd like to thank the Gladius team for setting that up and allowing us to get in, and we certainly look forward to it.
We're really happy to have you.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, no, we're stoked to be on board. And, we have a pretty good success rate when it comes to investing in ICOs as well. So let's see how we go. This would make it, I think, 4 from 4 or 5 from 5. I can't remember how many we've done now if we can go successful with this one. So certainly we're a group of long-term investors, and we look forward to supporting you in the long term. Alex, I know you're going to be super busy over the coming weeks and months, so I really appreciate you giving up your time for both myself, for the Crypto Wave investment crew, and for the viewers who have joined us today. Mate, is there anything you wanted to say about, in wrapping up, about Gladius?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I love doing this sort of stuff. It's really great. I think in terms of value, this is something that, I think I like really adding to the community, being a public figure, having people talk to us. It's really valuable, and it's cool and fun. And I'm always happy to set aside time to do it. So, if you ever have any more questions, you want to set up something like this again, I'd be happy to join.
I'll certainly be taking you up on that. We've got an investment behind you and the team, so we'll be checking in sporadically to see how that's all tracking along, Alex. Alex, thanks again for joining us. To all the crew, the regular Crypto Wave investment crew, thanks for joining us. And to the newbies who dropped in to give us some questions for Alex, thanks so much. I'll see you guys all tomorrow for another Crypto Wave investment crew cryptocurrency report and discussion. Tomorrow we'll have a look at more coins, but again, just honored to have co-founder and CTO of Gladius, Alex Godwin, joining us. Thanks again, Alex, and thank you to you all. See you all tomorrow.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Yes. All right, hang on.